For the late minister in the presidency, Jackson Mthembu, will be held at the Sacred Heart Roman Catholic Church in Ackerville in Emalahleni in Mpumalanga this morning. Mthembu succumbed to COVID-19 related complications in hospital on Thursday. The service is scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. and President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver the eulogy. We now cross live to our reporter in Emalahleni, Natasha Phiri. Natasha, a very good morning to you. Thanks indeed for joining us. We know that for the past few days you've been at the Mthembu home as the family was still trying to process the news that Jackson Mthembu has indeed passed on. So what are you seeing where you are right now? What can you tell us?
Well, a very good morning to you, Samkele, and of course to our SABC viewers. Unfortunately, it's actually raining. It's pouring here in Ackerville, Emalahleni. And of course, as you correctly cited, that the funeral service of the late minister, Jackson Mthembu, will actually start at 9 and is expected to end around 11 o'clock. We can expect the president of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to actually deliver that eulogy. But I mean, the mood here is quite somber, Samkele, as expected. The family, just talking to them over the past couple of days, still grappling, with this sudden loss of a father, a friend, and, a brother. Yesterday, we spoke to, officials from his political home, namely the Treasurer General of the ANC, Mr. Mthembu, and the ANC's Deputy Secretary General, Mthembu Duarte. And, they're just saying that as NEC members, as ANC members, they're actually all mourning the passing of Mr. Mthembu, saying that, the mood in the NEC Lekgotla was quite a somber and a sad one. If you'll remember, he actually passed on the eve of the ANC NEC Lekgotla. So people are still really struggling to come to terms with his passing, saying that his presence was really missed throughout the NEC Lekgotla. Also saying that they will continue, in the legacy of Mthembu. As you know, he was the person who stood out very stern against corruption within the governing party, especially through the former President Jacob Zuma's years. He stood his own truth. He spoke truth to power. And of course, the ANC saying that they want to actually live out and continue to honor his legacy. As you know, that he's been honored with an official Category 1 funeral, and flags are actually flying at half-mast. We also, when speaking to the ANC's Deputy Secretary General, Mthembu Duarte, yesterday, she had said that for this duration of the funeral, the NEC will somewhat be, put on hold and will only commence at 2 o'clock in honor of Jackson Mthembu. We also know that there are virtual memorials that will be held tomorrow by GCIS and by his political home, the ANC. But I mean, honestly, his passing has come as a shock to the nation, more especially because, he was behind government's messaging around COVID-19. And some would say that it is quite ironic that the very same thing he was warning people about, unfortunately, took his own life. If I'll just rehash what his brother, Michael Mthembu, had to say, the last conversation that he actually had with Jackson was that, he had said that COVID actually kills. People should be actually careful. People should sanitize their hands, should wash their hands, should maintain their physical distancing and wear a mask at all times. So quite a sad moment, not only for his political home, not only for, his peers in government, but for the nation as a whole, as this was a man who dedicated his life to the struggle for freedom in the country. And not only that, I mean, he was labeled as a man who loved, the people of South Africa, who loved his community and gave up his time for those people. So indeed, that service will be commencing at 9 a.m. And remember, people are, advised to adhere to strict social distancing regulations. People are asked not to come as, the funeral is actually limited to only the family and, of course, the president and those close officials to the Mthembu family. Samkele.
Now, just briefly take us through his life in Emalahleni and what he really meant to the community that he lived and grew up in.
Well, if you correctly remember, Simphi, I mean, he cut his teeth, into politics at a very young age. He was a youth activist in 1976. He was also a student leader at his school, Elukhanyiseni Secondary School, during the 1976 uprising. You also know he was also a unionist as well. He was also involved in the infamous, what they call the infamous Bethel trial, where he and 29 other people were charged with sabotage, treason, and terrorism. And of course, later on, they were actually acquitted. But I mean, he also played an active role within the church that we're actually standing right in front of. As you know, that in 1988, he led, a convoy of 300 minibuses as a SWAPO support group. So I mean, he not only played a role here in Emalahleni, but also across the border in Namibia as well. He worked his way up in the ranks of the ANC. At some point, he was the ANC spokesperson here in this province, and he worked himself up to being the ANC's voice and face between 1995 as, the ANC's national spokesperson. He also came back to that position once again between 2009 and around 2014, and then worked his way up. He was also the MEC of Transport within Mpumalanga. So, I mean, this is quite a seasoned politician. Some have labeled him as a political giant. But what's quite interesting about Mthembu is that, he was very humble. He was a man of the people. I was just reading a statement from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and the former president had described him as a person who embodied the Batupeli principles. This is the same sentiments that were echoed by Dr. Cassius Lubisi, who was the former Director General in the Presidency. So, people describing his loss, his passing as a huge loss, more especially for the people here, Emalahleni in Mpumalanga.
All right, Natasha, great chatting to you. We'll be touching base with you a little later on during the show, as the service will be starting in just a couple of hours. From the church, from the Roman Catholic in Emalahleni back to the home of Jackson Mthembu. We now cross back to our reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, a very good morning to you. From the last time we spoke, there was no activity in the background. I see that there's a bit of activity in the background. What can you see and what can you tell us at this point?
People are still trickling in the Mthembu home. We've got a colleague of the late Minister Jackson Mthembu, Deputy Minister Thembi Siwe. I was going to speak about the life and times of the Minister Jackson Mthembu, and particularly working with him in the presidency, how it's been for her. We do know that the minister was very passionate about imparting knowledge, particularly to the younger generation. You do know that she hails from the ANC Youth League National Task Team, and she was promoted to being a deputy minister in the presidency when she became a member of parliament, with alongside the minister in the presidency, Jackson Mthembu, after the 2019 general election, and subsequently they were appointed minister and deputy minister in the presidency by President Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm going to bring her in now, particularly to speak on what she has learned from the late Jackson Mthembu. Deputy Minister, condolences to you. You worked with Ubaba Mvelase. Just comment and words of how it was like working with Minister Mthembu in the presidency, and if he actually gave you space to lead and to actively perform your functions as a deputy minister.
I'm going to miss him. You know, the most part about him is that I never felt like I'm a deputy minister. He would call me to order, but he would give me space to advance my space. If you have followed my work, Minister never fought with me. He would always say, Thembi, umfazi wami uThembi. Ngiyakuyeka nje sebenza. Hamba. Do your outreach programs and so on, I don't know. I've lost a father figure. Minister would go to a meeting and I would misbehave. After the meeting, he would say to me, in the meeting he will protect me. After the meeting, hey, ungayenzi lento, and he would guide me. I'm not sure. Do we have so many replicas of Jackson Mthembu? Jackson believed in me. He would not make a decision without talking to me. I never felt like I'm a DM. He would call me, even at night. DM, Siyenza kanje, this board of MDDA, Brenda say, I'm doing this. What is your view? He would ask me that. I miss that about it. And we spoke on Monday, and he was okay. But it's fine.
What is it that you are going to miss mostly?
A fatherly figure, somebody who can tell you about the ANC, the struggle, and he would always tell me, Thembi, asijontshila, no corruption la, asijontshi, angifuni ukujontsa. If you want money, ask me. Ngizokuniga, hey. That's it. That's him. Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Condolences to you once again.
It's fine.
It'll be okay.
Really, Samkele? Okay, switch off.
Thank you.
Let me tell you what's going to happen.
I'm just going to ask the brother of the late Jackson Mthembu to also speak on the life and times of the late Minister Mvelase, Bab Michael. Condolences to you and the family.
Thank you.
Ngokukhulu ukuhlonipha Bab Michael. Sicela ukubuza nje ukuthi njengomndeni uluphi uhlelo oluzolandelwa ukuqhubekene nomsebenzi of ubaba Mvelase, the late Deputy Minister.
Ukusuka manje from 8 o'clock the ANC will be visiting the residential area of the late Minister Mthembu. The ANC will be handing a flag to Minister Mthembu's wife. Then from there, 8:15, the family members that are on the list will depart from here to the hall where the service will take place. They will depart at 8:15 for screening. Then from there, 6 members of the family will then come in together with the president at the hall. The service will start at 9 o'clock.
Most leaders of the governing party, particularly coming from their own conference documents and own words, say that there was a social distance gap. There was a gap between the leaders of the African National Congress and the leaders that they are leading. Many leaders today, when they go back to communities, they go armed in bodyguards, driving expensive SUV German machines. There is a social distance. There is no connect between the people and the leaders. But here your brother stayed amongst the people, lived amongst the people, was affected by potholes, load shedding, when water cuts were there. What does that say about your brother? And him not being part of those who adapt to be in the sins of incumbents.
What I can tell you, Samkele, is the Mthembu family wouldn't like to dwell into politics. But one thing that I will tell you is my brother was the people's person. He fought for the people of South Africa to be liberated. But other than that, he made his own choice. Everybody in life has got a choice. So his choice was to stay with the people. So that was his choice, and we respected that. So these other nitty-gritties, as a family, we wouldn't like to be entangled in the politics. We humbly request not to be in. You can ask any questions, but not anything that is political related. That's the request that the family asked me to humbly request it. Thank you.
No. Thank you very much, sir. Just lastly, how would you like Babu Jackson Mthembu to remembered, particularly looking at the wonderful work that he did and had contentious issues, particularly when it came to other issues of the Media Appeals Tribunal, and also how would you want his legacy to be preserved, particularly by the media fraternity?
Sometimes it's very difficult to not to borrow some phrase that are used in politics and in media. But one thing that I know about him is one guy who was firm, and he is one guy who didn't like corruption. He was a firm believer of not wasting public resources. As you've said earlier on, you said he was not driving this and that. That was his choice. He was one guy. He was a down-to-earth person. So I think, and he will love to see the media continue working with government hand in hand. So whatever problems that are there, they should be sorted out amicably, and it should be, the government should be transparent in whatever things that they are doing for the people and to the people.
Thank you very much, Babu Mvelase. Once again, condolences. Siyabonga baba. That was the brother of the late Minister Jackson Mthembu saying the family does not want to be drawn into politics of the day. They want to mourn the passing of their father, their brother, their relative, their grandfather, and they want his spirit to be respected. They want his legacy to be respected. And Thembi Siwaya, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, saying that she has lost a father figure. The family saying also that their relative was incorruptible, and they want that to be respected. Back to you in studio.
All right, Samkele, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be chatting to you a little later on. That is a reporter outside the homestead of the late Minister in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu. The funeral service will start in under 2 hours, and please do join Morning Live and make sure that you are tuned in.